Okay, well now, honey, we've talked about what you might have done on Drag Race other seasons. Let's get into your season, the OG season.
Okay.
You were the OG original goddess of Drag Race.
A long time ago.
I know, it's like I wanted to introduce this by being, are you ready to talk about 2 weeks, 11 years ago?
Really though?
In detail.
I hope I remember. I mean, it's been a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, we'll get into your memory and pull out what we can. Now, how did you first hear about Drag Race to even audition?
I heard about it actually through another entertainer in Las Vegas who had, I think, come across it online or something to that extent, and said, hey, you know, I mean, you might want to think about auditioning for this. And so I read up on it, and there really wasn't a lot of information. So I was like, I don't know. Like, I didn't even know if I was going to be, you know, driving race cars in drag. I mean, there was literally like nothing to kind of go by. But I went ahead and submitted the, you know, the packet, which was very small at the time. You know, now it's just, you know, 700 pages, and it was like, I think like 9 pages. I mean, it was like nothing. Yeah. So went ahead and did it.
And what was on your tape? Do you remember?
I do. In fact, a lot of people don't know this, but the original premise or concept for Drag Race was the Qween and a designer.
Right. Yeah.
So Coco Vega, who was my gown designer and my costume designer at the time, we had got together and said, okay, well, let's do this together. So made the tape, and you had to show, of course, your drag closet, and you didn't have to even do a lip sync back in the day of, you know, of one of Ru's songs or anything like that. And I think it was supposed to be like 9 or 10 minutes long is all it was. And I had, in my home in Vegas, all of my drag in my garage. So I went out there and just kind of went through some different things and sent it in. I mean, it was just real easy peasy.
No
like, give me a call, let's do it. Yeah, yeah.
So then you find out you're going to be on. It's still not, no one knows what it is. So was it a big deal to you, or it was just like, okay? I
was at a beauty supply buying hairspray and hair dye. And my phone rang, and it was Drag Race, and they're like, congratulations, we just want to let you know, you've been cast on the show. And it was kind of like, oh, okay. Now what? Like, I literally was like, I don't really know what this means, because I had nothing to gear myself off of. It was basically pack 18 of your favorite drag looks, throw them in a suitcase. You get 4 suitcases, 50 pounds a piece. Show up, somebody's gonna pick you up, and we're gonna start filming you and call it a day. I mean, so it wasn't that I wasn't excited. I think I was, but I think it was more like, I don't know what to expect. So it was almost a little fear for me, I think, because I tend to really like to need to know what's going on. I need every I dotted and every T crossed, and I didn't have that. So it was kind of just walking into the unknown.
And then, were you guys sequestered that first season?
You would arrive the day or the night before, and then they come in and they inspect all of your stuff, pull everything out to make sure, you know, you don't have a cell phone or any electronics and things of that. And then the PA leaves and the door locks, and you kind of sit there and you think, wow, what have I done? You know, you kind of, for me, there was a moment of like loneliness, because you're like, well, I don't have any way to contact the outside world now. I have a TV remote and whatever's on TV, and I'm on a deserted desert island for the next several weeks, and let's go. And I had never been in a situation to be on a set where there's 5 million lights and 5 million camera people and people coming in and out and wires and things everywhere. So it's a lot, and it's overwhelming, those first moments, because you're thinking, oh, I don't know, this might not have been the best idea.
Right.
So, yeah.
And now, was it filmed in RuPaul's garage?
It was filmed through a Coke bottle. We know that. It was a very, very, very small set. The set itself was very tiny, and it was a learning curve. It was a learning process. I remember checking into the hotel, and it was a very mediocre establishment, and it was like, okay. But yeah, the runway was a lot smaller.
Oh,
the lighting, everything was just so different back then.
It was like when just that disco ball turning and 4 judges lightly clapping.
That's about it. A couple of spotlights on the ground. Let's call it a day. Yeah.
And was that the first time on camera when you met RuPaul? Was when we saw her meet you guys on camera?
Yep.
And what were your impressions on that?
It was very overwhelming because I always had been such a huge fan of RuPaul. I mean, being an artist and being a kid when Supermodel came out, I mean, the CD was in there and I'm singing, Supermodel of the World while I'm drawing, pictures of Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
So it was like this iconic figure who I had looked up to for so many years. And then when you meet Ru and you have to do this because he's that tall, you think, wow, like you really are truly that legend. So it was amazing. But you're never around him in drag. And I had the opportunity on All Stars to be next to him while he was in drag, and that was even more surreal because he really is that picture perfect, flawless. I mean, I was awestruck when I was standing next to him in drag. So it was very surreal.
What were your favorite moments of that experience?
Of season 1?
Yeah.
I think, looking back on it now, the fact that I was actually able to be a part of the very first season and having it be so groundbreaking. I think often that maybe had that season not been so trailblazing and so successful, perhaps we would not have had all of these other seasons. Being the very first person ever to actually be seen on Drag Race.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. That's something that I know that nobody obviously can ever take from me. And just the fact that the show has truly come full circle and become so profound to so many. And it's taken the art form of drag and it really has put it in the laps of middle America. People who only ever saw drag on Geraldo and Donahue and Sally Jessy Raphael,
right.
You would have never thought about it any other way.
Now, you had a couple iconic moments on the show, and I can also imagine that having been someone who was already a drag professional, having these bitches come in with their off-the-shoulder t-shirts and jeans that you were like, wait a moment here.
It was challenging because to me, in my mind, in that moment, I thought, well, if I'm being asked to be a part of this big spectacle, the first ever reality-based drag television show, I would think, in that moment at least, that you would want to bring the best of the best. So you would want to bring the elaborate costumes and the wardrobe and things of that nature. And for me, having lived in Vegas and coming from Vegas at that time, I was kind of revered and thought of as that Las Vegas showgirl. Mm-hmm. And when you think of Vegas wardrobe, you think of things being over the top and things of that nature. But I also think, looking back on it, it was kind of too soon for that. They didn't really know what to think and what to make of what was going to happen. So although they put me on the show as being this Vegas showgirl, but yet you bring all of these over-the-top, extravagant pieces of wardrobe, but then you become criticized for wearing nothing but costumes.
Right.
Well, to me, drag is costumes, and that's what it has always been for me, and that's what it will always be. I never had the desire to want to look like, the average woman. I wanted it to be over the top. So it's like, I became frustrated thinking, well, you want me to bring all of this and do all of this, but then you want to criticize me for it.
Right. That must have been very annoying.
Very, especially after a 12-hour day.
Right.
In heels and corsets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the Medusa headpiece and the toppling of that, and whether behind the scenes that was a specific choice of yours.
That episode, I felt like I had not done well. So I knew for the runway, in order to save myself, I thought, well, I need to bring out kind of one of the big guns. And that costume, the whole thing was built out of leathers. And then I had the old school breastplate at the time that, they weren't hollow.
Right.
It was the heavy, 8-pound Velcroed around your neck. And then you've got this headpiece, and the headpiece is actually made out of like an insulation foam. Well, insulation foam retracts and absorbs and keeps heat in. So by the time the runway presentation had begun, I had had that costume on for hours. And I had been dripping sweat that was coming from underneath the breastplate, dripping down my body, dripping down my leg. I mean, I had puddles in my shoes. And of course, my head. And already thinking to myself, well, you're on the chopping block. You're probably gonna go home. And then wearing that outfit, when the song came on, I thought, what would be the smartest thing for me to do in this moment is to show them how vulnerable I can possibly be. So I'm gonna take and I'm gonna like shed myself of this skin, a snake skin, essentially. And that's what happened. And it's crazy because when the headpiece fell and hit the floor, it created this probably 3-inch slice in the headpiece, in the foam, in the front. I've never fixed it.
Right, it's too iconic.
That slit is actually still there, yeah.
Wow.
And I rarely wear that outfit anymore. I wore it a couple months ago for the first time in years. I just choose not to. It has a lot of memories, and I think that the memories are great, but they're iconic, and I'm proud of that moment, I think. So I choose to just kind of let it sit in the closet and do its thing.
Put it under glass with the Lucille Ball stuff.
Let's do it.
Now, there's a couple of iconic moments I just want to touch on. You voted for yourself to go home. You criticized the judges for not giving you enough praise.
Right.
You were pretty ballsy that season.
Again, not having anything to go off of and not knowing how big the show was, how big the show was going to become.
Right.
And weeks of being there and feeling like, well, nothing I'm doing you're liking, or it isn't good enough for you, why am I here?
Right.
What am I doing? So I did. I opted to vote myself off. And that day, I remember, was a very challenging emotional day for me. I remember I was very much in my head the whole day. And we had been filming for hours before the actual runway presentation happened. And I said to myself, I just cannot do this anymore. And I had wondered and I thought, what would my mom think if I voted myself off? It was never about what the fans would think because I didn't know what fans were gonna become. But it was really what would my mom think? And I didn't want to feel like I was letting Vegas down. I was successful with my shows at the nightclub in Vegas, and so I thought, I'm gonna come back here and everybody's gonna see this and they're gonna say, ooh, you failed. I didn't want to be a failure. But I knew that in my heart, it wasn't right for me. So people often say, well, do you regret that moment? I don't, because it was a decision that in that moment I made, and I choose to not really have any regrets in life. You do what you do, and you do what you do in the moment because it was the right decision for you in that moment. In this day and age, if I knew now what I did not know then, I would never opt to take myself off the show. Interesting.
Because the rewards are too big now.
Way too big.
Yeah.
Way too big. Yeah, that show has truly made incredible celebrities and stars.
Millionaires.
So many. Millionaires.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So.
Well, you did get a chance to come back. You did All Stars 1, the team's year.
Right.
You did very well. You won, what, 5 challenges in a row? 3 challenges?
I think we did 4. I think it was 4 in a row, yeah. It was fun. I enjoyed All Stars. I did not, we obviously we had no idea that there was going to be a team situation. So that was scary. I didn't know that Chad was going to be there, obviously. Nobody knows who's going to be there.
Right.
So I went with the mindset that time of thinking, well, I just need to relax and just do whatever and let whatever happens, happens.
Right.
And it was actually really fun. Season 1 was stressful for me. All Stars was just fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people that were on the show, and I had already developed some relationships with those queens, having already worked with them and met them and things of that nature. So it was kind of like, well, now I'm gonna get to go on the show and I get to work with my friends.
Yeah.
And that's why I enjoyed it. And even when we found out that we were gonna be in teams, and Chad and I looked at each other, it was kind of like, okay, well, what do you have in your suitcase and what do I have in mine? And it was strange because when we looked at our wardrobe together, we actually had brought several things that somehow kind of paired up in their weird sort of way. So it's almost like it was kind of like written in the stars that it was just gonna happen. And you know, Chad had just come off of his season.
Right.
He had been home for minutes.
Right.
And then gets a call, well, guess what? We're now putting you on this. So he found out, and I think he had like a few days to prepare himself.
Wow.
So, and he went on there, and I mean, obviously gangbusters. I mean, he let him have it. He was amazing. So yeah, it's just weird how it happened.
Wow, Shannel, I could talk to you all day. I could go into detail. You were worried about me talking too much. I could do a 5-episode stint just chatting with you.
Well, we'll do it. Tea and water with Shannel.
Oh, it's over?
Yeah, and it was so quick.
How's your chicken, girl?
You know, my plate is gone.
Well, Shannel, thank you for being here, sweetie.
Thank you.
So great to talk to a legend and have you right on the Sparkle
Legend
couch.
means old, sweetie. Legend means old. No, I've had a fabulous time. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, honey, not only today, but just in your career in general, you have turned it so fiercely that you have snatched a trophy, honey.
Finally! First time! It was always bowling before, so now I get one for this. I love it. Thank you.
And honey, we know you enjoy some menses, that we've gotten you a lap dance.
Bring it on! Yes, Daddy.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This is what I'm talking about. See, why didn't we do this earlier? We did that whole hour of this. This is amazing. I love it. I love
That's a legend, Randy. Work it good.
Yes. Oh, it's hot in here already. It's real hot now, though. It's real hot now, though. Ooh, yeah.
Well, Shannel enjoys her lap dance. Lady Red, take us out with some black lady screaming.
I love it.
Oh, yes. That is good. Yeah! All right. Thank you, Randy. Good job, sweetie. Thank you to Shannel. Thank you so much for being here.
I love my trophy.
I'm glad you do.
I get to take it. I really do.
Well. All right, you've earned it.
All right.
Thanks to Lady Red. Thanks to Randy. And thanks to all of you. We'll see you next time on Hey Qween.
Hey,
Bye,
Queen.
baby.